Okay, I think we are all set recording. So we're recording on Zoom. We're not recording on Facebook. That's okay. We will roll with it. I know it says that my name is Alyssa Showmaker, but I'm Stephanie Proud, also known as Stephanie Chico. Proud is my maiden name. Oh no, I'm an admin. Okay, I may be able to stream live now, guys. Hold tight. Sorry, of course I just started recording and then I got that notification. Okay, let's see if we can stream in there. Bear with me one sec. The girls are helping me get set up. Okay, we are preparing the live stream, so nothing like working on the fly. Okay, I am not sure if that worked, but I don't want to keep you guys, so we're just gonna keep going for it. Exactly, improvise, adapt, and overcome. We're gonna overcome this, I promise. Okay, I'm gonna share my screen with you guys because I have some slides, because I'm just a visual person and they help me a lot when I'm presenting and when I'm learning too. So, like I said, my name is Stephanie Proud, or Chico. And I'm going to be talking to you guys today about using your story to connect. So let me go into presenting mode. Okay, everybody see that okay? Let me know if you cannot see it. So using your story to connect, this topic is kind of near and dear to my heart. I feel like I've sort of always been a little bit of a storyteller, even since before I was a coach. I was kind of using Facebook as a blog, and then I even started like a little mom blog, and so I've always been drawn to blog type of writing, sharing story as a mom, all of it. If you guys are not muted, go ahead and mute yourself. It's going to be hard for me to get in and out of presentation mode. So storytelling is just near and dear to my heart, and I love that it's a really big part of being a coach. So we're going to dive more into that because I know that a lot of people get stuck on like what part of their story to tell. What if my story changes? Like what if life changes as I'm a coach? So we're going to dive into that because I'm very familiar with stories changing as a coach. So like I said, my name is Stephanie Proud. I hope you guys can see that. If you can always reconfigure where the window is on the side, you can move it to the top if that's more helpful for you guys. I am actually going to do that myself. There we go. So hopefully you can see me. Hopefully you can see and hear everything. Hopefully you can see the slides. Just let me know if there's ever anything that you cannot see. I'm going to have the chat open just in case. So just to give you guys a little bit of a timeline and my story in a nutshell, I started coaching in 2012, October of 2012. So I just had my 8-year coach anniversary back in October. It's kind of crazy because it feels like it hasn't been that long, but here we are, nearly a decade later. I had 3 little ones at the time. My oldest was still 3. She turned 4 right after I signed up to be a coach. So my oldest was 3, my middle was 2, and then I had a 1-year-old. She had just turned 1 6 days before my sign up date. So kind of a crazy time of my life. I had just moved to Arizona with my family originally from California. My ex-husband was a baseball player, so we traveled all over the country. We had lived in Florida for a few years, and when I was pregnant with number 3, we decided to move a little bit closer to family, and we settled in Arizona. My family is in Southern California, so it just seemed like a good idea. I did not love Arizona, I'm not sure what that little line is right there. That just totally distracted me. I did not love Arizona when I first moved here. I was 7 months pregnant. It was July, and even my movers were like, nobody moves here in July. You were kind of crazy. So I was very pregnant and very hot and very uncomfortable, baby number 3, and lived in Arizona for about a year when I became a coach. So I knew really nobody. We had some in-laws that lived close by, and a couple of friends that I knew, here and there, but nobody that I was super close with. I did not have a tight-knit group of friends. I didn't have local friends that I was hanging out with. My friends lived in the computer. So I was a member of like mommy boards and, due date clubs and stuff like that. In fact, side note, some of those women I'm still connected with. My oldest is now 12 and I'm still friends with them. So social media has been a big part of my life for a long time, like a really long time, since MySpace came out, really. And when I first got started with coaching, it was after I had met a fellow ex-baseball wife, and we were kind of traveling all over the place, and she actually introduced me to P90X at the time, and we would trade off babysitting each other's babies, and there were like little ones crawling around while we were working out, and we used ready-to-serve formula bottles as our dumbbells because we didn't have anything, and we rigged up like resistance bands, and it was my real first introduction to Beachbody, and she was really the catalyst to that. So she was not a coach yet. She didn't become a coach until the fall, and I kind of watched her, and I was one of her first challengers, and she introduced me to Shakeology, and then I kind of brought all my friends, and they ended up being her customers, and she kept trying to introduce me to the coaching opportunity, and I was just not really interested at that time, until a light bulb went on, and I was like, why am I doing this? I need to just sign up to be a coach. So that's kind of all of it in a nutshell. So when I signed up to be a coach, I had 3 little ones under 3. We were just newly living in Arizona, and I really didn't know what I was doing. I think a lot of us can relate to that, just really not knowing what we're doing when we sign up, and that's okay. So my story, and we're going to talk a lot about stories, looked a lot different back then than it does now. So there's a lot of life in between. So back then I was a married mom of 3 little ones under 3. Fast forward to now, I am divorced with 4 kids, and life is just totally different. So in even those 8 years, my story has changed a ton during my time as a coach. So, it's a tricky dance to share while you're going through some of those really big life changes. We'll talk more about that too, but I am familiar with it. And so if you guys are like, well, okay, this is new, I signed up to be a coach maybe 6 months ago. This is new. How do I talk about this? My life looks different. I'm moving. I'm having a baby now. Like, how do I talk about my story when everything kind of changes? And the way that I started isn't the way that it is now. And really, we've got to be, adaptable through those changes and understand that our lives change, and so does our audience, right? Our audience's lives change also. So that's okay. It's okay to share those changes. So I started my business as a stay-at-home mom. I always had the itch to contribute financially. I wanted to be a part of something. Like I said, I wasn't a part of like a friendship group. I didn't have any local friends. It really wasn't until coaching came into my life that I met people locally and had kind of a network of people and a support system. And I really have coaching to thank for that. And suddenly there was this need to contribute. And I really decided to just take the initiative. And there's been a lot of stuff along the way. Loss, you guys have been following me for a while. 2016 was not a great year. I kind of felt like I was at the top of my game as far as my coaching business went. It was like we were in qualification for 15 star. I was on the coach advisory board, and then my 26-year-old brother passed away, and that truly, kind of derailed me at the time, and for good reason, right? Like, that is life, and I think it's okay to be human, and it's okay to say, where I'm at right now, I'm really stuck. So if you guys are there, I'm going to talk about that too, because I also just went through really 2019 and 2020 were kind of again, another introduction to that, like feeling stuck and like, how do I really move forward when my story looks so different? And there's a lot of my story that I can't share publicly, or I don't want to share publicly. So how do I navigate that? So there's always a way, even through pregnancy and postpartum and weight loss and divorce and dating, single motherhood. If there's a way that I can share in a way that honors my privacy and my boundaries with social media, but also can add value or help solve a problem for somebody else in my audience, I try to find a way to share. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Visited Phoenix in July. Yes, I mean, I love the dry heat, don't get me wrong, but everybody's always really happy when it's not hot anymore. And right now it's really cold, and now we're like, oh, I want summer. So we can never be totally happy as Arizonians. So what is your story? I hope that you guys brought a notebook and a pen or a pencil or something. Maybe you can just kind of jog your brain while we're talking. This is going to be sort of a brainstorm exercise. If you guys are struggling to figure out like, what is your niche? Like, what is your market? Who's your audience? And like I said, that changes. When I was first starting my coaching journey, I had little kiddos. Like I had babies, 3 under 3. So that was a unique audience, right? It was moms of little ones. Then it was sort of moms of elementary school kids. And then it was like navigating loss. And there were a lot of people who I've connected with on social media just because of my journey through loss and grief. And that's been not only therapeutic for me, but so amazing to connect with other people who've experienced great loss in their life. And like I said, it can change. And so we're going to roll with that. So maybe when you started coaching, you had a certain kind of outline of what your audience looked like. And maybe you're a brand new coach and we need to work on fine tuning that now. So we're going to dive in. So I always like to start with interest, like what like gets you excited. You know, I think that that's really different for everybody. So what unique interests do you have that make you you? Maybe it's fashion, maybe it's decor. Are you a dog mom? Are you a girl mom or a boy mom? Or maybe like you're like me and you've got 2 of each. So I'm always like, am I a girl mom today or am I a boy mom today? Maybe you're still a student, or maybe you're a student again. Maybe you've gone back to school. Maybe you're a teacher, or maybe you're a nurse. Maybe you're a runner. Maybe you love the Peloton. Maybe you're a cyclist. You love to cook. You love makeup, writing, blogging. All of those things are super important because they make you who you are. They set you apart. And the more specific you can get, you guys, the better. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I want to like be all inclusive. I want to, be able to speak to everybody. And yes, that is great too. But if you're trying to speak to everybody, you're going to lose the people who you really should be connecting with the most. So the more specific you get, the more you can really dive in and fine tune it. What does your family life look like? Maybe you don't have kids. Maybe you're still living at home. Maybe you don't have kids yet. Maybe you're a newlywed or a first time postpartum mom. Been there in my coaching journey too. That was a very specific niche. And sometimes I'm like, man, that was a really great niche to be in, especially for coaching. Maybe you're single. Maybe you've got a lot of kiddos. Maybe you've got a mixed family. And I want to be specific when I say mixed. I think it's so relevant to be talking about like mixed families. Like maybe you are a certain ethnicity and your significant other is a different ethnicity, and you've got this beautiful mixed blended relationship or family. These are specific niches. There are people out there who want to see people on social media representing all of the different walks of life. Like we want to see people in different shapes and sizes and colors. That helps people understand that they're not alone, right? That there are other people that look like them out there. So, or maybe you have a blended family. Right now, I'm a single mom with 4 kiddos, and I've got a boyfriend who is an incredible bonus parent, and I'm co-parenting, and it's a crazy, wild thing, but there's other people out there who are doing the same thing. And so when I can kind of speak to that, and while some of that I choose to keep to myself, there's still a lot of it that I can share. And then you get messages in your inbox and you're like, and people are thanking you for talking about what other people don't necessarily share. So just remember, the things that you're drawn to, your people are going to be drawn to also. which brings me to style and aesthetic. Pay attention to what styles and layouts and content catches your eye on social media. If it catches your eye, that's your style, and go with it, and not necessarily copy it, but emulate it in some way. How can you recreate this in your own way? Maybe it's like a look of a filter or a preset, something really clean. Maybe you like the blacks and the whites, or maybe you like muted tones, or maybe, you know, it's like the blush tones, things like that. Like whatever catches your eye, go with that, because if it catches your eye and you know, catches your attention in some way, there's going to be other people out there who are just like you, who are, their eye gets caught by what you're putting out there. So I think that, I don't know, to me, that's super important. And I don't know if we talk about that enough. It sounds kind of silly, like not important, but I totally think it is. Do you have a more casual posting style, or does a really aesthetic feed catch your eye most? Just a side note, I've talked about this before, but apps like Planoly, there's the preview app, things like that, where you can, if you love an aesthetic feed, you can create your content ahead of time, put your preset on it, whatever you want to do, and upload it into the preview app or whatever app you're using. So you can really see the layout ahead of time. So then you don't maybe have 2 food pics next to each other. You don't have 2 selfies next to each other. These are the things that catch your eye, and they're going to catch other people's eyes too. So maybe it's artsy, maybe it's humor, maybe it's lots of memes and quotes, and maybe it's all of the above, and girl, run with that. Like, it's fine, whatever. If you like everything, that's fine too. School, work, past or present. So like attracts like, and a lot of the time our professional lives help us find our people. So even if it's, you're not necessarily in the workforce now, like I've shared a lot about the fact that I started working when I was 15 years old. As soon as I could get a worker's permit, I wanted a job. I wanted to earn my own money. And I am a big believer that if I exist, then there's probably people like me who exist, who like to work, and they like to contribute, and they like what work feels like to them. Maybe you work and go to school now, and that's a big way to connect with others too. Did you work or go to school before coaching? These are all things that you can consider and make a part of your story. I think all of it like leads up to where you're at now. I feel like the chat is going. Planoly preview. Yes, I just want to make sure that I'm not missing anything, and I should probably just shut the app down or the chat down, because I totally have ADD when the chat is going. So like I mentioned before, value added and problem solving is a big deal. So we're going to dive in next to kind of crafting your story, but what parts of life and your story are things that can be shared with others to offer connective tissue. So when I say connective tissue, what I mean is, when I say I've been through divorce and I'm going to talk a little bit about that, somebody else out there is like, hey, I've been through divorce too. Like we have that in common. We can share a little bit of, you know, information with each other. We can connect, we can talk in our DMs, we can build a relationship, and that connective tissue is what kind of creates those bonds with other people that you maybe aren't going to have with everybody, but you're going to have with your specific audience. I hope that makes sense. So even if you haven't achieved the end goal yet, I think a lot of people get stuck here too. Solutions can still be offered. So maybe the goal is, you know, to get out of your apartment that you're living in. You want to live in a bigger home, and you know that coaching is going to be the catalyst to achieve that goal, but you haven't quite gotten there yet. And so you're kind of like, well, I can't share, you know, this part of my story yet because I haven't achieved it yet. And how would I talk about it and, you know, be an advocate and represent the business well if I haven't actually achieved it? I really hope that you guys can, you know, get rid of that self-limiting belief right now, because I think a lot of the time the more powerful connection comes from just being able to say, this is the goal and I'm not there yet, but I'm sharing my story and here's where I want to be, and we can do it together. And I think that that's almost more powerful. It's more relatable. So don't let yourself get stopped in action when you're sharing and you don't feel like you've gotten to the final destination yet. Why can I not arrow over? There we go. And that line is really bothering me. Where did that line come from? Okay. So let's break it down. Like I said, we're going to kind of dive into crafting your story. So, and if you guys need to rewatch this, or maybe just write some outline guides so you can come back to like what your story really looks like, then you can kind of come back and do this a little bit later. So to break it down, we're going to go through how to tell your story. And there's going to be all different types, all different parts of your story, not types of your story. So first, we're going to talk about the setup. We're going to introduce your audience to the story you're telling by setting the stage. What's the backstory? Can this story be connected to your overall message or brand? You're laying your groundwork here. So for example, for me, when I became a mom, I hardly recognized myself physically and mentally anymore. So we're kind of offering the backstory. We're giving the problem. Then step 2 is going to be hitting them in the feels. So it's the confrontation of the situation or the original topic. It's really the meat of your content. This is where you can dive into the feel, right? If you guys aren't familiar with the feel, felt, found concept, it's super helpful when you're crafting a story and even when you're talking to people. So even when you're talking to like maybe a new potential client or a new potential coach, this is an opportunity for you to address what you're feeling. There's a weird code. This is where you can address the original story, and then you can talk about how it made you feel. So this is when, for example, I felt tired and sad that I wasn't magically filled with joy like I thought I would be when I became a mom, and I was just going to be like this magical, joyful person. I knew that if I didn't do something to help myself, nothing would change. So this is kind of the hook. This is the meat of your story. This is where that's where you're going to offer that connective tissue where other people are like, man, I can feel how she feels through her writing. And I felt the same way. And that is where the connective tissue forms. So the wrap up is where you give your resolution. You're going to offer your perspective and what outcome came from the lesson or can come from the lesson. Even better if you can subtly connect your lesson to an opportunity to monetize your readers. And we're going to get to that too a little bit more. So for example, I found my coach and fit group at the perfect time and found that I not only had a solution for my physical well-being, but I also have been able to contribute to my family's finances by building my own coaching business. I found my joy and I feel so happy and connected to such a wonderful community. So this is a total example. It is relevant to my life, but it's obviously very condensed and generalized. So you'd want to share a little bit more detail in there, but this is kind of the breakdown of how you can share your story with a really easy way to lay it out. So every time you're telling little pieces of your story, you can follow this kind of 3-step system to deliver your content in a more polished way. It's really hard to see that. I love this quote. I don't know if you guys know Morgan Harper Nichols, but she just hits me every time with the good stuff. Tell the story of the mountain you climbed. Your words could become a page in someone else's survival guide. I love that. Like I said, it's that connective tissue, you guys. It's like if you're not sharing your story, somebody else who is needing to hear it isn't going to hear it. So they're searching for somebody just like you. There's people out there who are just like you who need to know what you've been through or what your perspective is on certain things so that they know that they can get through it too, so that they know what's possible too. And maybe those types of people aren't going to convert to like a rock star coach overnight, but maybe by building those relationships and building those connections with people in a year or 2 years, maybe even more, you're sticking in there and you're continuing to share as you go. Those are going to be those people who join you because they see that it can be done. And maybe it's not going to take a year or 2 years, but you guys get my point. Sometimes it does. I have seen that happen. Stories change and so do audiences. So this is kind of what we talked about a little bit before. What got you here might not be what gets you there. So maybe you're like me and you started a few years ago and life looked a lot different back then and it looks a lot different now than it did back then. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that like the logistics of the business change. It doesn't mean that the way you present yourself changes. It doesn't mean that the business model changes. It just means that your journey is changing and evolving, and it's all right. You got to kind of readjust and keep moving forward. And continue getting to that end goal. Give yourself grace as you evolve. Like, you're going to change. That is life. And like I said, when people see that it's okay that you're changing, they know that it's okay that they're changing too, because their story is going to change also. That's just life. If you lose people along the way, it's okay. They were meant to be with you for a season, but maybe not the whole journey. This is super relevant to me. Over the years, a lot of the people that came into the business with me at certain times, because my story looked different then, it was relevant to them and relatable to them at that time. But my story and who I am now and who I've evolved into might not be as relatable. And it is so normal for customers and clients and coaches to come to you and work with you and maybe decide that they're moving on just like you have moved on with your life, right? Your story looks different. Maybe their story looks different too. So I think that we can get stuck in like a client who is working with another coach now, or somebody who canceled their coach account, and you're feeling like you need to beat yourself up about it. Please don't. Like, this is just part of the process. Your story is changing, you're evolving, their story is changing, they're evolving. It's all good. Like, sometimes people come into our lives for a season, and that's okay. You got to keep moving forward. Try to embrace all of the twists and turns of your journey for yourself first and foremost, but also so that others know that it's okay to embrace their non-perfection too. I think this is so huge. I think one of the biggest things for me in these last couple of years, just with experience like separation and divorce and co-parenting, that there's a lot of shame connected to parts of our story. And maybe you guys haven't been, your story doesn't look like mine necessarily, but maybe there are things that you're holding on to where there's some guilt and shame, and you're like, how do I share my life and my story when I feel so bad about this part of it? Or this isn't a glamorous part. Like, I even remember telling myself, like, I'm not goals. Like, I'm not goals anymore. Like, who wants to be the divorcee? Like, that's not goals for very many people. So that was a tough pill for me to swallow, but it was also an opportunity for me to give myself grace and just know that embracing those imperfections also gives other people the opportunity to see that they can give themselves grace too, that we don't have to hold on to that shame. We don't have to hold on to that guilt, that even though some of our story is yucky and not very pretty, it's still okay to share. However you feel comfortable sharing, it's still okay to share, because then other people know that they're not alone. I think that's so important. If I didn't see other people sharing, because the people that I follow too look a lot different than the people that I followed 5 years ago, right? The people that I'm drawn to today aren't necessarily the same people that I would have been drawn to years ago. So just remember that that's going to change too as you evolve, and that gives people opportunity to find you and realize like there's somebody just like me out there, and that's amazing. Monetizing your audience shouldn't be the main driver of your story sharing. Real connection cannot happen without pure intentions, but you also can't support your family and your dreams and your goals without connecting A to B. So there's this part that people get hung up on too. Wondering how to monetize, like wanting to use social media, like, yes, I'm gonna share this part of my story and I'm gonna grow my business. So before we get to, sharing the business to sell a challenge pack, we've got to really focus on that middle ground too. Sometimes the middle ground is what takes the longest. Actually, it's always what takes the longest. Really building those solid connections and those relationships, and doing it with good intentions. Like, I just want friends. And that's really, I started this business because I really didn't know anybody. And my friends lived in the computer, the people that I related to and that I connected to and that supported me, these perfect strangers supported me. I needed that. And I didn't need somebody to sell to me right away. I just needed to know that I was supported and that I had like a counterpart, somebody who saw me for me and that I saw them for them, and we could just enjoy that part before I was like, okay, yes, I will buy what you are selling me, right? So share your story should be the main part. Like, your platform is where you share and welcome people into your world, and then they can also see what you're doing with your business. But be very careful to I mean, I've heard so many people say like, oh my gosh, you're pregnant. That's going to be so good for your coaching business. And like, yes, it is. That's great. But let's not get caught up on that. Let's share the journey first before we get to point B. I hope that makes sense. Do your best to show up during all of it, even if there are parts of your story that need to stay for just you. I get that. And I think I touched on this a little bit already. There's parts of all of our story that are private, and it should be that way. Like, yes, we signed up to share our stories on social media and to have these public platforms and to kind of put it all out there, but don't forget to save a little bit just for you. I think that's so important. And don't be afraid, don't feel bad for keeping a little bit just for you. I think that's really important. I think you can share without putting it all out there, unless you absolutely want to put it all out there. I think that's great too. You follow the Birds Papaya and accounts like that. People do, they put it all out there, and I'm so thankful for influencers like that who do share it all. That's not necessarily me and my style, and just know that there's great qualities about both. So I think a lot of people are like, oh, I can't share this at all. You can. There's always a way. And if you guys need help, that's what we have our Slay Squad group for. We can always work on content together. I'm gonna stop my share and check out the chat and everything. I'm really hoping that that was helpful. My goal was 30 minutes and I think I achieved it. I'm gonna read through do you guys have questions or anything like that? Anything you'd like me to touch on more? I'm gonna see if there's any questions here. You guys can unmute yourself if you wanna pop in and share or ask anything also. Alita became a massive wino during my coaching story. Now a sober person, opened a huge new network. I love that. I totally should have had that in my little brain jogger exercise. Congratulations on being sober. That's incredible. Once it's out there, just make sure you want it out there forever. Huge takeaway from, yes, that's definitely true. My mom actually taught me that a long, long time ago. She was like, anything you put on the internet is going to be on the internet forever. Anything you write, even a letter to somebody, once it's written, like you can't take it back. So it's so true. Thank you for providing clarity, of course. I really hope that this was helpful, you guys. What is your biggest tip? Okay, there was a question. What is your biggest tip for sharing, but also still keeping some for you? How do you know when it's time to pull back a little bit and not share? I think, honestly, you just know in your gut. Like, you're gonna know, yeah, I'm not quite ready to share that. There's things that we all go through that probably just should be private. And I think that's okay. Especially if you want to keep it that way. I don't think that there should be pressure around sharing certain parts of your story or your journey. I think there's a way to do, some of my good coaching friends through coaching, people outside of, my very tight inner circle, had no idea that I was separated from my ex-husband or going through a divorce. That was a time when I really had to keep it, and I really had to keep a lot for myself, and for good reason. If you go back through my feed, I feel like I do that every once in a while. I go back and I'm like, ooh, I was in a rough place there. But there's ways to share and have great content, like eye-catching photos. Maybe you're doing shorter captions. Maybe you don't feel like you want to have like these really long captions in your feed posts, but you can share a little bit more in your stories. That's what I was doing a lot too. I was keeping some of my stories private, or you can do a close friends list, like maybe people that you know personally, if there's certain things that you just want your personal friends to know. I hope that helps you guys. I'm such like a jibber jabberer. Yep, we all have changing stories. There's some things that I'll never put out there, and probably the same for you guys. Like that's okay. That's how it should be, and that's okay. Hardest time sharing about my divorce, especially as I left for a woman and have 18. I totally get that. And congratulations about being out. That's incredible. I'm so happy for you. That's beautiful. And exactly, I love what Kelsey said. It's not taboo. It's wonderful. And of course, boyfriend just pulled up and the dog is barking. So what website maker do you guys use? Because I don't have anything. I'm starting from scratch. I actually just built a website. And if I can do it, I truly believe anybody can do it. I used Wix, Wix.com. It was very easy. If you guys aren't familiar with it, check it out. It made it so simple. Like I said, literally, if I can do it, you can do it. A 5-year-old can do it. Okay, share your scars, not your scabs. I love that. Yeah, give it a little bit of time. Like maybe it needs to sink in and you need to process it first for a little while before you put it all out there. I think sometimes gaining that perspective too takes a little bit of time. And then you can get to a point where you can really teach and share and come from like a loving place where there's not maybe that fresh emotion attached to it, if that makes sense. Have you ever experienced a drop in your engagement due to what you're posting or not posting? Definitely. I think that comes with the territory on social media. I think once we all figure out the perfect formulas and algorithms, then they change again. So I think that's even, you can be sharing the same content and your story can stay the same and your engagement's going to change. It's just kind of the name of the game. Just stay on your toes. Like, don't doubt yourself. It's not what you're putting out there. Oftentimes it is the algorithm. But sometimes what I'll do when I'm feeling kind of a drop there, I'll go back to when I felt like my engagement was really good, and I'll look to see what I was doing differently, like what types of photos I was putting out there, maybe what parts of my life I was sharing a little bit more of. I'm a little bit more private with pictures of my kids. I shouldn't say private because my platform is totally public, but I don't share pictures of my kids very, very often in my feed. But then I see that people love it when I do. So I'm kind of like, okay, how can I do that a little bit better and more often, but still honor kind of those boundaries for myself and my kids? Because now my kids, of course, are older and they're like, I don't want my picture taken. So, now I'm dealing with that. How far back in our story do I go before coaching? The past couple of years have been kind of crazy. Oh my gosh, I feel like everything can be related to coaching in some way. I know that sounds kind of crazy, but I go back to like when I was 15 years old and working at a pet store to my coaching journey now, because when I started coaching, it was kind of the same as when I started working at the pet store. And I just wanted to like contribute. Even at 15, I was like, I don't want my mom and dad to have to give me everything. I wanted to walk into Walgreens and buy whatever scented body lotion I wanted for myself and know that I did that for myself. And that's who I am. So that's why I feel like coaching has been great for me. And those are my people. So the people who also like that feeling of hard work and contribution, if I exist, they exist. So dig as far back as you can. I mean, I think all of it can connect, and all of it. Milkshake is super user friendly. I have Milkshake instead. I had Linktree for a while as the link in my bio. I think Milkshake is really fun. I think it's cuter than Linktree. No offense to anybody using Linktree. Maybe we'll have some more Milkshake lovers. People don't always like my stuff, especially now that I'm a coach, so I focus on other aspects of my life. It's so important. I mean, coaching is a huge part of all of our lives, but it's not our life. Like, it shouldn't be the starring role in what we share, right? It shouldn't be like the story that we're telling. A lot of it can be related to coaching in a lot of ways. A lot of my life is the way that it is because of coaching. Like, I'm grateful to coaching for everything that I have and everything that I'm able to do. That doesn't mean that coaching is the end all be all. It doesn't make me who I am. So I love that you focus on other aspects of your life too. Could you have 2 IG pages or just edit your personal page? I think maybe you're talking about the preview apps, Sierra. You could totally have 2 Instagram pages. I never personally did that just because 1 is plenty for me mentally. So I was like, I don't know how I could have 2. I'm going to scroll down. What do you find helps with building up engagement with current algorithms? That's a great question. I know that Instagram likes when you use Instagram features. So if you have the swipe up, Instagram wants you to use it. If you're you know, all of the poll options, all of the quiz, all of the questions, like do a, you know, Ask Me Anything Friday, or one of the girls in my downline, Erica Neelan, just did secrets, like tell me your secrets. You guys, you have to go to her Instagram stories because she's got a whole highlight reel. It's incredible. Those are juicy secrets, but I'm sure her engagement skyrocketed because she was utilizing the questions box and people were sharing deep dark secrets with her, and it was very entertaining. Now she does Secret Saturdays, so follow Erica for really great entertainment. Okay, I just want to make sure that I'm not like taking up everybody's evening. I'm going to scroll down. I'm new to this and I'm having trouble being personal but still selling the product. I believe in the workouts but also feel guilty in selling even though I know it helps both parties. Any advice? Don't feel guilty. I think that's my advice. I think you have an awesome opportunity, not only for yourself, but for other people. Whenever I've gotten stuck in, okay, so for example, right after my brother passed away, I was reconnected to a lot of, you know, friends and family from years past. Like after my brother's memorial service, I connected with my brother's friends on social media. And then I was like, okay, how do I still be in business mode when I've got these newer followers? Like, will they judge me for like being businessy in this time of my life? And I think that at the end of the day, you have to do you. You have to look out for what's best for you. When people see that you are pushing through challenging times, or when you're taking your business seriously, maybe you're not even going through a difficult time, but you're just taking your business seriously and putting yourself out there as a business owner, I think that gains a ton of respect from people. So there's gonna be a little bit, especially if you're brand new. I mean, I remember when I was just starting and there were a lot of naysayers, there were a lot of people that doubted me. Instead of letting that stop you up, let that fuel you and let it help you become the even more professional and polished coach that you were attracted to when you signed up in this business, right? So just get rid of the guilt. I know it's hard. I'm like I struggle with guilt all the time. Like it wakes me up at night. I'm like, oh my gosh, was I too mean to my kids today? Like I feel guilty, but at the end of the day, it's all good. We create the guilt. I think that that's the biggest lesson. Mental health, a good thing to share alongside of coaching, or do you think it can be a negative topic? When I talk about it on social media, it gets mixed reviews. I think whatever is important to you and you can speak to it authentically, you should share it. Like if that's important to you, then you should talk about it. Like I said earlier, like the more specific you're getting with your audience, the more specific of an audience you're going to have. And while that sounds like, oh, but that's going to be less people, that's okay. Because you don't want to have 50 people that you don't really identify with and you don't feel like you're connecting with in your challenge group, or they don't feel like they're really connecting with you. I would much rather have 5 people who are my people, my tribe, versus 50 people who I don't really get, or they don't really get me. Does that make sense? YouTube, how to create a swipe up without having 10,000 followers. YouTube is Vanessa Lau. That is some juicy information. Okay, I think we're at the end of the questions. I hope this was helpful, you guys. And I just think that your story is so valuable. There's people out there who need to hear it. There are people out there who haven't heard, they haven't even met you yet, and they're looking for you. And when I think of it like that, I'm like, okay, I've got to get to work. So thank you guys. Thank you. Hope you guys have a great night. I will get the recording uploaded ASAP since it didn't stream into the Facebook group. So take care. Have a great week. Happy February too.